Welcome to this first lecture. This is U.S. History 2112, the second half of U.S. History. I'd like to start this class by talking about a topic that you may have heard of. We call it American exceptionalism. If you haven't heard of it, you will as we enter the political season. 2016, of course, is presidential race. And our politicians use this concept of American exceptionalism. They use it as an attack weapon. They go after each other, claiming their opponents do not believe that Americans are somehow exceptional. Historians don't use this term as in a pejorative way. We use it as a tool to help students understand and to critique what they hear about American history. So what I want to do is tell you what American exceptionalism is. We're going to characterize it, and I'm going to tell you why it's significant. American exceptionalism is the story that we tell about ourselves, the story of our country, our history, our present, and our future. American exceptionalism is characterized as a success story. It's a story of continuing progress. There's a notion that each generation will be better off, at least materially, than the preceding generation. American exceptionalism says that there's no impediments that we cannot overcome as Americans. These obstacles could be political, economic, military challenges. It doesn't matter. The American people will overcome any obstacles. There is also a sense in American exceptionalism that our mission here, Americans' mission here, is sanctioned by God. You get the notion sometimes that this vast continent was empty when the English colonists showed up. And of course it was not. There were millions of indigenous peoples living here, in addition to the various other Asian and European peoples that had already settled here. So this was not a Garden of Eden. This was a continent teeming with people. It was contested by the various Europeans and Indian nations. So American exceptionalism says that it is our destiny to dominate this continent. And here I'm talking about the English colonies, of which we are, of course, descendants. American exceptionalism says that not only are we sanctioned by God, and not only are we destined to dominate this continent, but that we have certain characteristics that make us different from the Europeans, and that these differences contribute to American exceptionalism. Now, there are two particular aspects that I want to mention to you now. First is the notion of American freedom. You'll find, especially as we enter this political year, that there are two magic words that are used in American history by politicians. And those two words are freedom and liberty. If you count the number of times that politicians use these terms, I think you'll be surprised. Politicians know these are magical terms. It's almost like an incantation. They use them constantly because they know that they are music to our ears. For instance, everyone knows the Liberty Bell. You can still see it in Philadelphia. The only other thing that bell could be called is the Freedom Bell. In revolutionary times, it was not uncommon for a village or a town to erect what they called a liberty pole. This was symbolic of that population's determination to be free from English rule. In revolutionary times, it was not uncommon to see a liberty tree. There's one image in particular where you see colonial or colonist tarring and feathering a British tax collector. And behind them is the image of a tree, and carved into the bark is the word liberty. This British tax official is being tarred and feathered, which is bad enough, but it could be worse. You can see hanging from one of the large branches of this tree a noose. So there are worse things than tarring and feathering. You're all familiar with the Statue of Liberty. The only other thing we could call it would be the Statue of Freedom. Again, these are magical words that resonate in Americans' ears. American freedom, I want to further characterize it by saying that it's portable. We can take it places. In the second half of the 20th century, we have tried to take American freedom to a variety of places. We have military bases on virtually not every country, but you'd be surprised at the number of countries that we do have bases in. And this is a way of extending American freedom to Asia, South America, Europe, and elsewhere. When I say American freedom is portable, what I mean by this is that we believe that it is a gift, that American freedom is the greatest thing that we could possibly bestow upon other people. And we're quite often baffled when other people are not appreciative of this gift. You can see this most recently in Afghanistan and Iraq. Two cultures that have no traditions of republicanism, market economies, stress on the individual like we do. These notions of American freedom are alien to them, and it's baffling to the American people that we try to give our most precious gift to people and they throw it back in our face. So think of American freedom not only as portable, something that we can take with us, but think of it also as something organic. It's not static. It's like an organism. It expands, it contracts. American freedom, for many of you listening to my voice 100 years ago, you would not have been full-fledged citizens of this country. You would not have been able to vote, and vigilante justice could have wrecked you and your family if you were the wrong color. American freedom has expanded to include women. It is more recently expanded to include African Americans as full-fledged citizens. It's not a static thing. American freedom grows, it shrinks, and it excludes people at times, and it includes people at other times. A good example of this today, two groups off the top of my head that I can think of. Latin American immigrants seeking to enter our country. Immigration, of course, is a big political issue, and you'll hear a lot about it next year. These people from Latin America want a piece of American freedom. They see the possibilities that it offers, and they want a slice of it as well. Another group that I can think of off the top of my head is the gay population. And the changes are occurring very rapidly in the gay and lesbian communities. They want the same rights and privileges that their straight neighbors have regarding insurance coverage and other things. So American freedom is something that you need to think about critically instead of passively. It's not a cliche. It's a very powerful weapon, a verbal weapon and an ideological weapon that we use to justify our intrusion into other people's affairs. American freedom should further be characterized as, how should I put this? American solutions are applicable to other people's problems. There is a notion of the American people as a quote-unquote can-do people, and that we can solve not only our problems, but the entire world's problems. American freedom also has about it the idea of republicanism, and by this I don't mean the Republican Party. I mean the radical ideology brought here in the 17th century by Englishmen. Republicanism, let me characterize it for you. It stresses civic responsibility. It stresses that the elite should take it upon themselves to lead their lesser peoples. But most importantly, republicanism has about it the idea of the fear of concentrated power. You'll notice that our government is set up where the political power is spread very thinly. We have an executive branch, a legislative, and a judiciary. Power spread very thinly among these three branches for a reason. The idea here is to never allow power to be concentrated in the hands of a few. The purpose of this, of course, is to keep any particular branch of the government or any particular person or group of people from taking your liberties from you. You need to remember that the Founding Fathers, when they constructed this Constitution that we still enjoy today, they constructed it in part in opposition to the English king, whom they regarded as a tyrant, a man who held far too much power in his hands. So your government is constructed with these Republican ideas, whereby power is spread among three branches. You've all heard the expression checks and balances, and that's what this gets to. Now, the construction of American freedom, this idea we have about ourselves, is often this idea, it's built in opposition to Europeans. In other words, Europeans are corrupt and Americans are innocent. Europeans are untrustworthy, whereby the Americans are most trustworthy. You can see this in George Washington's warning to the American people in his farewell address, telling us to be careful of becoming entangled in European affairs, that it was okay for us to trade with the Europeans, but we should avoid their deceitful diplomacy, we should avoid alliances, we should avoid getting involved in European wars. You can see this same type of thing, this idea of American exceptionalism, in a more recent president with Ronald Reagan. Reagan never tired of talking about that shining city on a hill. He took this from a Puritan minister back in the 17th century, whereby the English colonies in New England were to be sort of a beacon to the rest of the world, a guiding light to the rest of the world. Follow us and we will show you the way. Reagan used this image every chance that he got, and it is a powerful image because it illustrates what makes us exceptional. It's almost as if we're the new Israel, and we are doing God's work here on earth. I want to mention Manifest Destiny as well. This will come up again, but this is a good place to introduce it. Manifest Destiny was introduced as an idea in the 1840s when the United States went to war with Mexico. And a newspaper editor introduced this concept. And what he meant by it was that it was our manifest destiny to spread Republican institutions and the market economy across this continent. And that anything that got in the way of this wave of American progress would be brushed aside, whether that was Indians, Mexicans, wildlife, what have you, that the wave of American progress was inevitable. Manifest destiny, a very powerful idea that justifies the expansion westward of the American people. You can look at the images that we have included on D2L for you, and you can see the images of the various symbols of American freedom that I mentioned earlier. And I want to call your attention particularly to the painting. We call it Manifest Destiny. And you can see the native wildlife fleeing westward as symbols of American progress make their way westward. You can see back east where American civilization has already conquered. The skies are blue, and you can see in the west, the skies are turbulent, dark, and stormy. You can see trains, stagecoaches, farmers moving westward, pushing the indigenous wildlife out of its way, including the Indians, including buffalo, including bears, and so on and so forth. There is a sense here of inevitability. You can see telegraph wire being strung. You can see Columbia, the symbol of American freedom. She has a book in her hand. Is that a Bible? It doesn't really matter. It symbolizes both Christianity and literacy moving west across the continent. So I'm going to stop here with this first lecture on American freedom. And in our second lecture, we'll look a little closer at it, at some of the details to make this more clear for you. Thanks.